Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of The Draw Step. Today we have kind of a really janky build here. This is the type of deck that you don't necessarily care about crazy combos or having the most guaranteed win cons. What you care about is really just confusing your friends. Sitting down at the table with a commander that most people would look at and think, wow, that's a really terrible commander. Why would anybody use that? And then you win. So that's the game plan. How are we going to accomplish that? Who are we working with today? Glad you asked. We have Ian the Reckless. There's a good look at my boy Ian. He says, whenever Ian the Reckless attacks, if it's modified, equipment, aura, 1/1 counters, counters, modifications, anything like that. So whenever he attacks, if it is modified, you may have it deal damage equal to its power to you and any target. So when he's attacking, to be clear, it just says attack, so you don't even necessarily have to do combat damage. But you are then, when you attack, you can punch yourself in the face to also punch someone else in the face. This is a great example of masochism on a stick. So, why would we want to do that? Well, what we have done with this deck is we have built a way to make Ian as big and scary as possible. And yes, we're going to take some punches to the face from Ian, but he is also going to be delivering frickin' haymakers to our opponents. If you enjoy deck builds, kind of off the wall stuff like this, definitely subscribe to the channel. Maybe you have an idea for an off the wall commander that you want me to either review or build around. Go ahead and drop that in the comments. Let me know. I will check it out. We're always doing some pretty crazy deck builds around here. And don't forget to like this video. Now, let's get into it. Starting out with the lands. This is a mono red deck. You legitimately could go for just strictly basic lands. You really don't have to do anything but that, because there's no other colors that we're trying to, there's no like mana fixing or anything like that. I do have a couple non-basics in here. I have Smoldering Crater. It has a cycling ability, so if later in the game we already have enough mana out, you can get rid of this to get a card. I have Hidden Volcano, kind of for the same reason. It has Discover 4, which basically just allows you to cascade. Spine Rock Knoll, and this one has a hideaway ability, so get some extra value when you lay that land. And then last I have Forgotten Cave, which again, cycling ability, same reason as before. Rest of them just basic lands. Just throw your basic mountains in here in this deck, call it good, you're great. All right, next we have our instants and sorceries. We have a couple different here as far as just digging into our library to find the cards that we're looking for. So we have Thrill of Possibility, which again is a good way to do some card draw. Expedite. Target creature gains haste until end of turn and draw a card. This is nice because as soon as we get Ian onto the battlefield, he's a 2-mana 2/1. So once we get him out, we want to be able to swing with him right away to start using that ability. So this is card draw, and it's giving your creature haste. Raise the Effigy. For 1 mana, you can either destroy target artifact or attacking creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So again, boost his strength to be able to use that to either take out opponent's creatures, punch an opponent in the face, whatever you're wanting to do. Relentless Assault, 4 mana sorcery. Untap all creatures that attack this turn. After this main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. So for 4 mana, basically, you are getting to swing through twice and double your commander's ability. Ambitious Assault, 3 mana. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn, and if you control a modified creature, draw a card. Again, Ian is going to be modified pretty much the entire game, so it gives you some card draw as well as making him hit for even more. Trash for Treasure, 3 mana is an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battle. We have some really strong equipment and artifacts. If an opponent takes out one of them, you can, say, sack a treasure token. You can get rid of maybe a mana rock that you don't need anymore and be able to bring back that more valuable piece for you. Explosive Entry, 2 mana, destroy up to 1 target artifact, put a 1/1 counter on up to 1 target creature. So, make Ian a little bit stronger. Reckless Handling, 2 mana, search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into your hand and shuffle, then discard a card at random. If an artifact card was discarded this way, deals 2 damage to each opponent. So it's a bit of a risky tutor. It's tutoring for that artifact, but you also have a chance of discarding it or another card that you care about. So, kind of 50-50, but it can get you the card you're looking for. Unleash Fury, 2 mana, double the power of target creature until end of turn. This can be massive. Once you get Ian to a certain point, for 2 mana, you're now doubling how strong he is. So when he swings through, it is going to be laying waste to our opponents. And last, we have Isengard Unleashed. 5 mana is pricey, but says damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control would deal damage this turn to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals triple damage instead. A triple damager, and it has flashback. So again, the logic here is we do have ways of giving our commander trample and some evasion, things like that. So we are almost guaranteed to be connecting with our opponents, doing damage to them. And then when we trigger that ability, yes, it is draining us, but it's draining our opponents for even more because there's the combat damage and the non-combat damage that is being delivered to their face. For enchantments, we have Uncivil Unrest. For 5 mana, non-token creatures you control have Riot. They enter the battlefield with either a 1/1 counter or haste. If a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. Again, we love doing double and triple damage because, especially in this case, if a source you control or if a creature you control would deal damage to a permanent, Ian is the one doing the damage. So if his power is, say, 5, we punch ourselves in the face for 5, but we're hitting our opponents for 10. That's tremendous. Rising of the Day, 3 mana, creatures you control have haste, and legendary creatures you control get +1/+0. So making Ian even stronger and allowing him to swing through quite quickly. 1 mana enchantment, Sticky Fingers. Enchanted creature has menace, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. When enchanted creature dies, draw a card. So every time we're attacking, we're now also getting more mana through those treasure tokens. And if, an opponent does take care of Ian, which inevitably they'll try to, at least you're getting a card out of it. Claws of Valakut, 3 mana, enchanted creature gets +1/+0 for each mountain you control and has first strike. Again, we have a lot of mountains in this deck. We have pretty much nothing but mountains in this deck. So for 3 mana, we are getting a giant buff on Ian. Sound Drums, 3 mana, enchanted creature is goated. If enchanted creature would deal combat damage to a permanent player, it deals double that damage instead. So when you think about it, this is really doing triple damage. You're hitting your opponent, you're hitting them a second time because of Sound of Drums, you're punching yourself in the face, and hitting them a third time in the face. This can get out of hand very quickly. Even when Ian, say you have him at 5-6 damage, that is now potentially 15 damage that you're getting your opponents for when you swing with him. Draconic Destiny, 3 mana, enchanted creature gets +1/+1, has flying and haste. That evasion can be great to make sure that we're not only triggering our commander, but hopefully connecting for some damage as well too. And pay 1, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It's a dragon in addition to its other types, and when it dies, you can return this enchantment to your hand. So even with this, you lay it down, and then you can pump it even more by paying that 1 ability as much as you want. Unquenchable Fury, 3 mana. Enchant creature has whenever this creature attacks, it deals X damage to the defending player, where X is the number of cards in their hand. And then when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand, same as the last one. So again, just another way to make our commander even stronger and get in some extra damage while we're at it as well too. Dictate of the Twin Gods, 5 mana, flash. If a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player. So this is both combat damage and non-combat damage. So we are now doubling Ian's damage when we're hitting people in the face. So hopefully you're picking up what I'm laying down here. Yes, we are going to be hitting ourselves for a little bit, but we are going to be hitting our opponents for so much more. It's going to be delightful. They're going to sit down and think, what the heck is this guy doing? And they're going to realize very quickly, oh dear, I do not like what this guy is doing. Moving right along. Fiery Inscription, 6 mana. That's a lot. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that much damage. So again, you thought 5 mana for double damage was great. Try 6 mana for triple damage, even better. Roiling Vortex, 2 mana. As an enchantment, each player's upkeep, it deals 1 damage to them. Not a lot, but pings them for more. And then whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. Not super applicable all the time, but hey, sometimes that could come up, and then you can pay 1 and your opponents can't gain life this turn. So if your opponent is playing a life gain deck, you can use that 1 mana ability to make sure that they can't get around what Ian is recklessly doing to them. Dragon Cultist, 5 mana. Commander creatures you own have at the beginning of your end step, if a source you control dealt 5 damage or more this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. We're going to be doing a lot of damage with our commander. So now on top of doing that damage, we're also getting a 4/4 flyer, which is going to be great for, swinging or defending as well too. Descent into Avernus for 3 mana. At the beginning of each upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on Descent into Avernus, and each player creates X treasure tokens, and Descent into Avernus deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of Descent counters on Descent into Avernus. This is a speed piece. This whole deck really is very aggro. We are not sitting around, building pillow forts, trying to set up combos. No, we are just punching people in the face, and we want to do it as quickly as possible. So, trade-off. Yes, we are giving our opponents, treasure tokens as well too. We are helping them ramp. Not great. However, it is dealing damage to them. It is getting us those treasure tokens, so we're just going to want to try and capitalize on that damage. And the other thing too is if you have something in play like your Fiery Emancipation, now they're getting those treasure tokens, but they're also taking triple the damage you are in return for those treasure tokens. So kind of a good payoff there. And then last, for our enchantments, we have Eldrazi Conscription. 8 mana, kind of pricey, but enchanted creature gets +10/+10 and has trample and Annihilator too. I'm going to be really honest with you. I have had this card for a while. I pulled it from a pack, and I have just been dying to put it into a deck. And I'm so happy that Ian gets to be the one to hold on to this little guy, because that is ridiculous. Now, bare minimum, having this on Ian, he is now doing 12 damage. 12 damage to our opponents when he swings. They can't do anything about it. Even if he's not connecting with them, they're still getting 12. And that Annihilator too, that is huge. You are going to wipe out your opponents. You are going to clear their board state. They're not going to love it. All right, on to our artifacts. The first one I have is Strionic Resonator. For 2 mana, you can pay 2, tap it, and copy target triggered ability you control, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Ian's ability is a triggered ability. It's when he attacks, you're triggering that ability. So now you can pay 2 mana, punch an opponent in the face, punch another opponent in the face. That is one of the downsides of playing a commander that is heavily based on equipment and just trying to go in and slug. Your biggest issue is that you're unfortunately most likely playing with more than one opponent. So having this way of hitting multiple people at once for just 2 more mana does help make Ian a little bit more competitive in that multiplayer format. Now, the other thing too is it says if it's modified, you may have it deal damage equal to its power to you in any target. So you could have Ian swing on one opponent, hopefully connect, do some damage, and then use the non-combat damage on another opponent. So we do have ways of splitting up our damage, but that resonator, that deals quite a bit more and gives us that flexibility we're looking for. All right, moving right along. Our ramp package, Soul Ring. Every deck should have one. Wayfarer's Bauble. Good ramp piece, get another mountain in play. Arcane Signet, 2 taps for our commander's identity. And then last, we have Glittering Stockpile, 3 mana. You can tap it, add 1 red, put a stash counter on it, and then you can sacrifice it and add X mana of any one color where X is the number of stash counters on Glittering Stockpile. So it's a little pricey for a mana rock at 3 mana. However, it can build up and give you 1 giant boost of mana if you want to have a really big explosive turn. Dowsing Device, whenever Dowsing Device or another artifact enters the battlefield in your control, up to 1 target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Then if you control 4 more artifacts, you can flip it over. It turns into a land which can buff your creatures. Next, we have Two-Handed Axe. This is nice because it's an adventure, it has that instant and the ability, but the instant is target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn, again, allowing Ian to do even more damage. And then the equip part is whenever equipped creature attacks, double its power until end of turn. So not double strike, but in some ways even better because double strike doesn't really help the non-combat portion. Doubling his power does. That's nice. Two-Handed Axe. Ring of Valkus? I don't know. 2 mana, but equipped creature has haste. Again, we want to be able to get Ian out and swinging as quickly as possible. Beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature if it's red. Ian is definitely red, so he is not only going to be a speedy little boy, but he is going to be taking roids every turn. Well, every one of your turns. Explorer's Scope, 1 mana. When it attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. This is going to be a great ramp piece for us. Again, we're mono red. We're not like too concerned about mana, but having that will help speed things right along. Here, next I have Masterwork of Ingenuity, 1 mana. You can have it enter as any artifact or equipment, so if you have a really good piece, why not have 2 of those? Trailblazer's Boots, 2 mana. Equipped creature has non-basic land walk. Can't be blocked as long as defending player controls a non-basic land. A lot of your opponents are probably going to be playing non-basic lands, especially as they become more and more popular, especially in the commander format. You're most likely going to have an opponent who has those non-basic lands. Put this bad boy on Ian, and now you're guaranteed to be connecting and doing that commander damage. Diamond Pickaxe, 1 mana delay, 2 to equip. It has indestructible, and equipped creature gets +1/+1, and has whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token, similar to one of the other enchantments that we had that also created treasure tokens when we attack. Batter Skull, 5 mana, but it is a living weapon. Equipped creature gets +4/+4, has vigilance and lifelink. So this is it's a solid equipment. Buffing up Ian, giving him lifelink, but also in a pinch, it can be a creature in and of itself. Fire Shrieker, 3 mana, equipped creature, has double strike. That's great. Beamtown Beat Stick, 1 mana, equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has menace. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Again, nice to be able to get more mana. Also, speaking of Beamtown, I made an entire deck about the Beamtown Bullies. So after you finish this video, you should go and watch the deck build for the Beamtown Bullies, because now that is a very toxic deck. Swiftfoot Boots. Everybody should know what a Swiftfoot Boots is. gives you hexproof and haste. Great. Love to see it. Black Blade Reforged, 2 mana, equip legendary creature for 3, otherwise equipped for 7, but we're going to be equipping it to Ian for 3. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So again, especially as the game goes on, this is going to become quite a bit stronger. Sword of Vengeance, 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has first strike, vigilance, trample, and haste. That's quite a few keywords there. That can be very important. Now, these final 3 equipment that I have are arguably some of the most important in the deck. Because as we've gone over, yes, Ian going to do damage to us, but can do more damage to our opponents. What if we had a way to nullify the damage Ian was doing to us? How do we do that? Well, first we have Basilisk Collar. 1 mana to lay, 2 to equip. Equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink. So now, when Ian is connecting and doing that damage, he is the one doing the damage. So that triggers the lifelink ability. So any damage that we're dealing out, we are now gaining that life back. So it doesn't matter the fact that we're punching ourselves in the face because we are getting twice as much health back from that. So that now turns a bad thing into an incredible thing. Why would we hurt ourselves? We don't want to hurt ourselves. Well, Ian does want to hurt ourselves. But let's gain some life off of it. So we got Basilisk Collar, Butcher's Cleaver, 3 to lay, 3 to equip. Definitely a lot more expensive and cumbersome than Basilisk Collar, but equipped creature gets +3/+0, so making Ian even stronger. As long as equipped creature is a human, it has lifelink. Ian, old boy Ian, he's a human warrior, so he will have lifelink. And then last we have Loxodon Warhammer, again, 3 to lay, 3 to equip. But equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has trample and the very important keyword, lifelink. So technically we have, four different equipment that can potentially give Ian lifelink. Those are going to be critical to get on Ian to make sure that we can effectively take out our opponents without absolutely annihilating ourselves along the way. Because that is certainly a possibility that we might accidentally do that. But hey, at least we're going down swinging. All right, last but not least, we are almost there. We got the creatures. Who are we working with? First, I have Goblin Matron, 3 mana. When Goblin Matron enters a battlefield, you may search your library for a goblin card, reveal that card, put it in your hand, then shuffle. She's a 1/1 tutor. We have a few goblins, not a ton. The main one that we're looking for is a key Battle Squad. It's a 6 mana Goblin Samurai. It's a 6/6, and whenever 1 or more modified creatures you control attack, untap all modified creatures you control. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. So basically what we're looking for there is to either get this or to tutor for it, but it's giving all of our modified creatures, primarily Ian, second combat, which is very strong. Treasure Nabber. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of your next turn. So you're temporarily stealing your opponent's mana rocks and giving yourself that extra mana, which is certainly nice. Angarth's Marauders, 7 mana for a 4/4. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. We've already been over this. We already know why this is so strong. Having it on a creature, that's nice. Kedis, Emberclaw Familiar. This is a very important piece. Getting this one, 2 mana, 1/1. Whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. We already went over how this can sometimes be a little clunky because you're really focusing on just Ian and you have multiple other opponents. Now with that in play, any combat damage you are doing into an opponent, you're doing to everyone. That's big. Fiendish Duo. It's a 6 mana 5/5 devil with first strike. And it says if a source would deal damage to an opponent, it deals double that damage to that player instead. So again, our Descent into Avernus, the non-combat damage from Ian, a lot of different things are going to be doing damage, doubling up that damage, huge. Sulfim Mayhem Dominus. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right, but it's a 4-mana 5/4. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. And then you can pay 3, discard 2 cards, and make him indestructible. So for even less than the Fiendish Duo, we have a creature that is doubling the damage. Bladegraft Aspirant, 3-mana 2/3. Equipment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and they cost 1 less to activate, to connect to him. But the main thing is that it's making our equipment a little bit cheaper to play. Oliphant, for 6 mana, 6/4 trample. Whenever it attacks another target creature you control, it gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Pretty solid. Help Ian out while he's at it, or you can mountain cycle it for 1 if you need that mana. Bloodsworn Steward, 4 mana, 4/4 of flying, and commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have Haste. They have haste. So it's going to make Ian stronger and get out and go. Iron Myrrh, 2 mana. It's just a mana dork. Gets us that red mana we're looking for. Trailblazing Historian, 2 mana. Haste, tap it. Another target creature gains haste until end of turn. Foundry Inspector, 3 mana. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So same as the other one, just making those artifacts a little bit cheaper to play so we can get them out quicker. Thundering Raiju, 4 mana, 3/3. Whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. We have so many equipment, so many different artifacts, enchantments, that sort of thing. We will probably boost some of our other creatures outside of just Ian, but even on its own, it's still doing damage just because we have Ian. Peerless Samurai, 3 mana menace. When a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, the next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast. Ian is a warrior, so if he attacks by himself, you can cast a spell for slightly cheaper. Godo Bandit Warlord. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an equipment card, put it onto the battlefield. If you do, shuffle your library. When it attacks for the first time each turn, untap it, and all samurai you control after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Main thing is that you're able to get an equipment card onto the battlefield for free. So especially if you have a really expensive one, you can cheat it out there. Brass Squire, it's a 3 mana Myrrh. Tap, attach target equipment you control to target creature you control. So this is a nice way to get around some of that equipment cost. Defiler of Instinct, 4 mana. First strike is additional cost to cast red permanent spells. You may pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 red less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of red mana you pay. Whenever you cast a red permanent spell, Defiler of Instinct deals 1 damage to any target. So again, this can make your spells cheaper by paying life to do it, but it's also pinging your opponents every time you're laying those red spells. Fang Dragon, 7 mana for a 6/3 flyer, but it also has a sorcery for 2 mana, deals 1 damage to each creature you don't control. If your opponents have like a token army built up for 2 mana, you could take out all their 1/1s. Chandra's Incinerator, 6 mana, costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Depending on when you play this, if you're a couple turns in, Ian is out there wheeling and dealing, doing his thing, doing all that non-combat damage, you could get this down for as low as 1 red mana. But it's a 6/6 with trample, and whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So on top of Ian punching them in the face, you can also have Chandra then punch their creatures in the face. Last but not least, final card of this deck. It's also the newest include for the deck from the Duskmourn series. You guessed it, Screaming Nemesis. So, 3 mana, 3/3 with haste. Whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Again, Ian can target whatever it wants. It can be you, it can be an opponent's face, it can be an opponent's creature, or you can just target Screaming Nemesis. And now you bounce that damage off of Screaming Nemesis onto an opponent, and they are screwed for the rest of the game. They cannot gain life. It doesn't matter if they're playing a life gain deck. It doesn't matter what they're doing. There's nowhere but down from there. So this is a really strong piece to help make sure that your opponents can't get around all the damage you're doing. That being said, that is the deck. Let me know what you think. Are there any tweaks you would make? Are there different creatures or equipment that you would add or take out of this deck? I have played this deck a couple times. It's really fun. It's very chaotic. It is very fast-paced playing it. But yeah, go ahead and let me know in the comments below what you think about this deck. I have a new deck build pretty much every week. I have quite a few on the channel already. You should go back and watch. There's going to be a card at the end of the video that will show you a recommended video. And again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.